think about where you want to be in 10 or 15 years when you're thinking about maybe if you were to exit. What does your business look like then? And then start to draw your roadmap backwards. How many salespeople does that look like? What's your gross revenue? I think that's a really great starting point is starting with the end in mind.
Today we have Tyzer Evans from Tyzer Evans Consulting. Welcome, Tyzer.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
It's great having you. Can you tell us a bit about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in sales for quite some time, and I ended up consulting clients I was selling to on how to better sell in their business. And so I kind of said, maybe I should jump out and do some more consulting full time and help people kind of get their sales game in line.
Great. And like, how did you get started in that? Like, was it just one day you said, "Okay, great, let's do this"?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had run some e-commerce businesses that I had done online while I was working full time for Fortune 500 companies, and love that aspect of being able to be creative and have my own autonomy. And so understanding maybe that the e-commerce stuff wasn't necessarily for me. It was I was doing t-shirts and glasses and stuff like that. So I said, well, what could I really apply as my expertise? And I said, well, you've been a top sales producer and manager at every company you've ever worked at, so just take your own playbook and help people revamp theirs and kind of expand on theirs.
Great, I love it. And so then, where do you kind of bring the most value to the marketplace now?
Just helping small to medium sized business owners, people that typically hadn't really thought about how to best manage a sales team, how to launch a sales team. A lot of people struggle, especially in small businesses. My wife's an entrepreneur, and she's got two employees, right? So she does everything. She's doing the selling, the accounting. She's the CFO, the CEO, the CEO. And so a lot of people kind of get stuck in that rut, and so they know that they're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of their revenue stream to start hiring salespeople. But then it's like, well, I was never in sales myself, so where do I go from here? How do we put structure into place to make sure it's the money, the ROI is going to be there, right? Investing in a salesperson or a sales leader.
Yeah, that's good. And so, could you give us a couple of tips around hiring salespeople successfully?
It is quite the challenge. I'm not going to BS anybody on that. It's difficult. I think the first thing to do, it sounds simple, but not a lot of people take advantage. There's so many great different types of personality testing out there, and there's different types of quadrants salespeople typically fall into, and oftentimes, if you haven't really been engrossed in sales, we tend to hire people that are more service oriented because they're nice and they're friendly and they always want to do right by the customer, and that's great, but that's not necessarily always going to drive revenue. So I always suggest looking at different crystal nose, the disc test. There's different things where you can start to have different personalities and understand what best aligns with a salesperson's traits, and then kind of hone in on that. Obviously, vet more people than not. Someone with a little bit of experience is great, but there's a lot of different. That's a really loaded question, but I always say start there with understanding how the person's mind works, and then you kind of know what better questions to ask on into an interview.
Yeah, I love that. And so then personal business question for you. What had to change in you between kind of, where you first started out and now where, you have a successful and growing business?
I'm sorry, Ryan. What changed?
Yeah, what had to change in you, like on a personal level or, in a management style
Mm.
or, something along those lines?
Yeah, I think the commitment to myself was the most important thing. For a long time, I relied on my natural ability, and to take something seriously, it's always interesting. I think a lot of people we graduate high school or college, and that's our skill set, and then people don't continue to improve on it. And I was one of those people. For the majority of my 20s, I kind of relied on my natural God-given ability to be able to communicate well with people and have a high EQ. But as I got older, I said, hey, if I doubled down on my skill set like a professional athlete, they practice every single day. So we should be doing the same thing with honing our crafts. And so started attending webinars, seminars, consuming massive amounts of sales books, doing web training. and then just people that were better than me, reaching out and finding mentors within the space as well.
Yeah, that is excellent advice. So, what's been the most challenging part of growing your business?
Everybody's, especially when you're dealing with small the medium-sized business owners, they're so engrossed, right? And it's their baby. They haven't really started to detach themselves from it yet. And so sometimes it can be hard when someone comes in is can be critical, and can give you the brutal truth of just, hey, here's where you're at, here's what's broken, and here's how we can fix it. And people can take that a bit personal. Other times, people will know that they need you, but when it comes associated with a cost, they then will kind of back away, right? And so it's just under having that person truly understand the value of, hey, you understand there's a problem here. You got to invest to fix the problem. And again, small to medium-sized business owners don't always want to reach into their pocket to invest what's going to serve them long term. So sometimes, getting that message across, they've got to go through a few more quarters of struggle before they go, yeah, I got to fix this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, what advice would you give to other business owners and CEOs who really want to break through to their next level?
Really redefine your systems and your processes. I think a lot of times in that space, people can tend to be very reactive to their business, as opposed to really having a dialed in 1, 3, 5, and 10 year plan. I think, I was talking with my wife. I try. It's interesting. It is. I consult, but she doesn't always want my advice. But we were having the the conversation last night. I said, her name is Ashley. I said, Ashley, you got to start with the end in mind. Think about where you want to be in 10 or 15 years when you're thinking about maybe if you were to exit. What does your business look like then? And then start to draw your roadmap backwards. How many salespeople does that look like? What's your gross revenue? I think that's a really great starting point is starting with the end in mind.
Yeah, I love that. And for the business owners who would be listening, and myself included, I've definitely had patches of going through periods where I've had really bad hires, like one after another of salespeople. What would you say to them around how to kind of you know get those A players on team?
What is interesting is that, and I've met with people. Actually, there's a gentleman that I know that's fantastic at this. His name is Steve Suggs. There's people out there that will just recruit salespeople. So they have their own refined process. So if you're someone who's struggling and you've had 2 or 3 bad salespeople that didn't work out, and you put the time and money into them, and they were gone in 6 months to a year, and you didn't get the ROI, then I would look to someone who specifically does that. Invest in someone that's all they do is they go out and they recruit salespeople.
Yeah, great. And is that also where you can assist in terms of, bringing that, mentorship and coaching and that sort of thing to the program?
Yeah, absolutely. Having spent said a lot of time at Fortune 500 companies, there's one company we literally did interviews every Thursday at 9:30, 11:30, and 2. And so, doing that for 6 years, I mean, I hired hundreds upon hundreds of salespeople. So you pick up on different key traits and characteristics. Like I hired a retired teacher. People thought I was insane. She ended up being my second producer on my team that year. So you never know.
Yeah, I love that. So if you could go back 5 years and give your slightly younger self a bit of advice, Ty, what would that be?
Oh, start sooner.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
think that people tend to get a bit too comfortable. Even business owners, right? You get comfortable. You settle for, I'm okay with this. I can accept it because we make excuses. We validate in our mind with where we're at and why it's okay to stay there. So I would say start sooner and go more aggressive earlier.
yeah. I love that. I definitely take a bit more of an aggressive stance when it comes to sales and marketing and getting the business out there because I mean there are people who kind of shy away from that and I guess that's kind of the natural human condition. But yeah, like could you give us all right, well actually what's your biggest tip for a business owner who has salespeople in the sales space?
Make sure you set clear and defined expectations for your salespeople. You see this time and time again. You hire a salespeople and then you expect them to go sell, and then you get frustrated when they don't meet your expectation. but really it's your fault because you haven't clearly defined it. And then not only do you need to define it, you need to have a clear path on how they're supposed to achieve the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. And finally, Ty, who can you best help? And if they want to get in touch, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I think just like that said, small to medium sized business owners, anybody with either by yourself, if you're looking to hone your sales skills one on one, or companies, I said, up to probably 1,000 people. Usually you got a sales staff then of 20, 30 people. Be great to work with you and help assist.
Yeah,
And the
great.
best place to find me is just on my website, my name, tyzerevans.com.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyzer. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for the insights that you've been able to bring today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.